You know, I've never heard someone say green is their favorite kind of gummy bear. We're live! First ever
Ooh,
live appearance, Randy.
so exciting. Like, yes, we are real people and we are here right now.
Yeah, it says there's 3 people in the audience. I didn't tell my mom, so I don't know if it's your mom, anyone
No,
else, Randy, but
no.
like,
I did tell my team in our private Slack channel, not like for Kitchens writ large, but in our private Slack channel for just my team. I'm like, hey, if you want to see the live show, like, the very first one, you can come and join us. So I don't know. Maybe they're here. Maybe that's who's here. Maybe they're robots, YouTube bots. I'd like to think it's my team, but who knows?
they want to see it unravel. However, I mean, how it's done behind the scenes. Well, what you see is what you get with this show. This is designing good company. You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it raw in its realest fashion possible. The post production. This is it. This is the show. We're
Yeah.
start. We have a community on LinkedIn. We've told people in DrupalCon about it. We're just building this thing up, and we decided, you know what? Why don't we just do it live? Because if we're really trying to be our real, authentic selves, what better way to do it than to do a live podcast, which I don't know. I mean, this is the second one I've done. Have you ever done any live shows before, Randy?
You know what? Actually, I have. I have done some live shows, not like podcasts in like a professional realm, but some like tabletop RPG actual plays. I have actually done live. I've done a
Oh.
fair number of them live for like I. I run some gaming sites, and so I used to run some games live as part of
Mm.
the Patreon. So that gave me a lot of experience going live.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Well, when you say tabletop games, my brain immediately goes to um just Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
And
it's the
that's
most
actually
popular one.
okay, I was about to say, like, that's actually now that I'm trying to think through more, those are the only ones I know about. So
Yeah. That's the only one anyone knows about is Dungeons and Dragons. Like that's it. No one like unless you like role playing games, then you're not gonna know any other ones. And that's as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. But I as a gamer, I love tabletop RPGs and I play and read and explore a ton of them.
mm.
From stuff that's a lot like Dungeons and Dragons to stuff that's very far afield of Dungeons and Dragons. So
So today we're talking about UX design.
mhm.
How similar, I mean, and I guess like, well, for folks who are tuning in today, maybe that's not an area they work in. What is UX design?
So
And how is
UX
it similar to
design.
D&D?
So okay. So here's my kind of definition of UX design is that it's a blanket term that covers user experience and visual design. It covers how things look, how you use them, um, and making sure that everyone enjoys the experience, and that ties into you know Dungeons and Dragons because you need to be able to manage your character. You need to manage the story, make decisions. You have to understand what you're doing. The person running the game has to provide an experience that like, hey, here's a question, like how do you want to resolve it, and roll with those results and make sure that everyone is having a good time in that shared experience. And so like UX design really is making sure that people have a shared experience that is at its best delightful, and hopefully not a tragic, terrible experience.
Have you ever had a tragic, terrible experience with D&D?
Oh my God, so many, so many.
Really?
It's
Oh, that.
yeah,
Why do you
it's
keep
one of
doing
those
it then?
things that so here's the thing with D&D, it is very much a you buy the wine by the bottle kind of experience because the person running the game sets the tone for the game, sets how what your enjoyment level is going to be. I mean, everybody else at the table influences it, but the person running the game, like if they decide that they're going to be like very adversarial and um try to prioritize things that aren't fun, then you're not going to have a good experience. So yeah, it's all about making sure that you have like You're part of a group that is having fun and
Mm.
prioritizing sharing that experience and making it delightful, as opposed to making it something that is adversarial. Like it can be competitive, but it doesn't, like, for me, adversarials where like the line is drawn, where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to follow the rules despite the fact that no one is having any fun.
So, okay, going back to this then with UX design. When tying this in, when I think about one thing you said here is like you basically start with the goal, start with the end goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we trying to
Yes.
get? And then the next most important thing you said was having fun or just having the right people there, right? The right team, the right group. My question is when I played D&D, I am that like chaotic Jack Sparrow. No one really knows what Broderick's going to do, how he's going to get us in trouble. We know there's value, it's entertaining, but maybe not the greatest person to have on your team for UX, or maybe that is. Maybe having that wild card who can think outside the box, but they're like, we gotta like create a different box for this individual. I don't know. I mean, you're in the creative space. I mean, you're literally a unicorn. You're a developer and designer. So take me through it. Like, do you have people who are like, whoa, it's a little like really out there, rein it in, work with that person's creativity. There's value, but also like you can't get us all killed.
Mm-hmm.
So like how do you do that? How do you manage that to appreciate someone's talent, what they bring to the table, while also staying in the confines of the game, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely. What you need to do is, it all starts in the setup. And so the question is, like, are you setting the correct like boundaries and setting the correct tone for the work that you're doing, whether that's Dungeons and Dragons or UX design work? Have you communicated that the adventure that you're going on is going to be a pirate themed adventure? So someone who's afraid of water, um, it's you're going to have to take special consideration into that. Like, it could be funny. It could be something like B.A. Baracus and the A Team never liked to fly, so they always had to knock him out. Like, it could be an interesting trope that happens in the game, or that player could just be like, I refuse to go on the water because I'm afraid of water. And it's like, okay, instead of leaning into it as a thing that makes the story more interesting, you're turning it into a way for your character not to engage with what's going on. And with UX design, you set the stage by understanding what it is you're working on. When you're trying to refine, like if you're trying to refine a user flow, you're not setting the stage for this like big experimental kind of like thought processes where you're like, okay, we're going to like nuke everything from orbit, we're going to rethink everything, and we're going to see if we come to the same decisions. There are some projects that do that, but there are other projects that are like, listen, we have a user flow that's good. We want to see if we can like increase its value, get, more out of it. And that's we still have creative thought, but we need to like focus that energy in a certain direction.
Mm.
And so like it's about matching expectations for the project with the right person. Like, there are some people who are really good at thinking very large and divergently, and then also narrowing down and thinking very strategically and analytically. But sometimes you have to realize who is working on what kind of project and where their strengths lie. Like, Captain Jack Sparrow is not a creative director that I would want to like work on refinement of anything. But I tell you what, he's an idea man. And so like that's where like, give me your biggest, craziest ideas and let's see where we go with that.
Well, today, as we're going through UX design, we're going to be talking about the past, what's had been done before, going into some things that are currently happening, and going into the future. Now, going back to Jack Sparrow for a second, you had mentioned to me before we had talked about how in the past with UX design, it was just the Wild West. Experimentation, it wasn't just one person was Jack Sparrow on a ship of people that are organized knowing what they're doing. It was just everyone was roaming. And everyone was aiming to be the worst pirate that everyone's ever heard of.
So I have to actually like pause for a moment. This is our first live stream, and Broderick, every time you talk into your microphone, I am hearing a great deal of static. And I don't know if that is just me or if that is
For the live
Uh,
audience.
that's something for our live audience.
It's
So,
it's one of those things we're gonna take a listen to later and be like, oh, that happened. But
all right.
we're live, so and Deandra hears it too. So at least the good
Okay.
news is for anyone that is hearing it and it sounds bad live in post production, it'll sound great because it's being locally recorded. So you can always listen to that too.
Okay, fantastic. So let's go back. Let's talk about like the past of UX design where everything is like absolutely crazy. You know, the past of UX design has been wild experimentation. You know, we had a burgeoning field that has been like growing for the last like 20, 30 years, where we're trying to kind of like figure out, trying to get our sea legs around what the web experience is supposed to be, where things are supposed to be. I remember when I got into like web design like 20 years ago, there was experimentation on where the logo goes, like on the website. Like, is it in the upper left? Is it in the center? Is it on the right? And there was a lot of experimentation on websites as to where to put the logo. There was also, I remember having discussions with people about whether or not the logo in the header should link back to the homepage and whether or not there should be a discrete home link in the navigation. Like those were patterns that people were like, do we need to make this explicit? Do we like, are we adopting this pattern of not having a homepage? How are these things like sussing out? And I know that like now, like every logo goes in the upper left hand corner. Pretty much. If it's not in the upper left hand corner, it's in the center, just like we've got right here in the overlay that we've put together. Um, and so like this, all of this experimentation was going on as we were figuring things out, and there was a lot of chaos. And what we've found is that some of these things started to converge into patterns of expectations. Just about every system that exists, like there are lots of multitudes of how to handle it. And as those systems develop, things that are successful get adopted and things that are less successful don't get adopted. And so it's kind of like I was reading an article recently on Medium about like road lines, like the white lines on roads, and how like the question is like, is that a good thing on roads or not? Like we've adopted it as a way to like keep people in their lane, but they're also something that is difficult to see at night. And some studies have also proven that if you remove the white lines from roads, people have a tendency to drive slower because they have to pay more attention to what they're doing. And so as a result, like it increases safety because they don't feel like they have like the bumpers there. And so like this experimentation that goes on with the web, has brought together a lot of patterns that are kind of taken for granted now.
Mm. Well, speaking of the now, what are some things that we're looking at right now? We talked about the convergence of experience, like everything's the same, making everything easier to navigate. But also, if everything's the same, like I think about driving by and just on not even the web, just going by and seeing brick and mortar stores, everything feels like a slate concrete gray with a Starbucks, Burger King, McDonald's, whatever logo slapped onto it. And a lot of things feel, and going back to the UX space, a lot of things feel like not only are it's the same building blocks, but it feels like everyone's the same vendor doing the same thing. Let's talk about the present for a second and how you can also stand out in a space where you feel like, well, we have to look like this because people have come to expect it without reinventing the wheel. So let's talk about the present for a second here.
Yeah, we're in a space right now where because of this like convergence of like processes and expectations, like the hamburger menu, where the logo goes, our expectations of when you like hover over a link, what should it do? How should it react? All of these questions have generally been answered in very like definitive ways. That what we have are we've had a rise of like design systems and component libraries where we kind of codify a lot of this, and a lot of this, it makes it easier for people to put these things together, which means that it's harder to stand out. Because if everybody is using material design, like the UI kit provided by Google, if everyone's using material, how do you stand out? Because you kind of have the same patterns over and over again. You have this kind of the same choices. And we're in an era right now where in the Wild West in the past, it was like it's like we took an experience that was bad and we made it good. And now we're in an era where just about everything is good. And now we're trying to make it great. And any project that I've worked on, like getting it from bad to good is super easy. It's like, listen, like you've got all of these big problems, these red flags, really easy to take care of. It's the yellow flags and the green flags that you want to make greener that are tough. It's like that old axiom of like the last 20% of a project is going to take 80% of the time because you're like refining it. And that's what we're doing right now. We're seeing like refinements. Like how far can we push design systems and component libraries to like maximize the user experience and to maximize like business value? And how can we provide a user experience that is appropriate for whatever that particular like business or entity or client needs? And so it's really it's really tough, and so we're really pushing, and it's making it really hard right now in the UX industry. We've seen a massive amount of layoffs, and the jobs that are like, there's still a lot of jobs, but almost all of the jobs are for senior level people because they're trying to like push that envelope harder. They're trying to get that last 20% perfected. And that's really challenging. It's really tough. And it requires having like long, hard conversations about how do you do that? Like, do you make the font size just a little bit bigger? Do you, provide like just little changes that help make it smoother? And when I say make it smoother or make the experience better, I'm also talking about um, sometimes like reintroducing friction into the user experience so that like users maybe slow down. Like an example of this is I worked prior to working at Four Kitchens. I worked at a marketing agency, and at the marketing agency, we had a client who kept having like these different demands for their email newsletter subscriber base. Like they're like, we want more subscribers, we want more subscribers, and we're like, we can get you thousands more subscribers by putting a pop-up on your website, and everyone fills it in, and they like sign up for your newsletter. And we told this client, we're like, that's going to get you hundreds to thousands more people on your email list. And they're like, great, do it. We're like, all right. And then what we would find out is like months later, they'd be like, listen, our unsubscribe rate is really high. Like it's really high. Like we've got like 15 to 20% of people unsubscribing from our newsletter. Why is this happening? And we're like, because you wanted a bunch of signups. You didn't want quality people on the newsletter who were going to engage with your content. You wanted a lot. And so like we have to, there's some, it's always best if you can kind of predict these things, and that's something that comes with experience, but sometimes you just have to live through it. Sometimes you have to walk that decision maker through and say like, I can get you a lot more signups, but they're not going to be high quality. And maybe they want the opportunity to try and make them high quality, which is fine, but like there's always this yin and yang sometimes with user experience where like you want something and you get it, and it turns out not to be the most effective thing. And so it makes it tough.
Before looking into this topic today, one of the most commonly searched things on YouTube, Google, whatever, when it came to UX was, what's the difference between UX and UI? Every time, every search engine, one of the top three things that came up.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
So UX is the user experience. Okay. And for me, that is a user comes to your experience, they experience it, and then they leave that experience. Okay, that's a super generic way of saying it. If it's a website, they come to the website by like whatever means they come. They're either searching out your service or they want to read the article that's on your blog. They engage with the content that's there. You try to encourage them to do whatever it is you want them to do. Like, if you're on YouTube, you want to watch videos. If it's like reading a news item, like reading the news item, and you want to try and like make them do what they're going to do, but you want to leave them with a positive experience. And then at some point they leave, and you want to make sure that that experience has an effect on them, that they have taken away what it is that you want them to take away. Okay, whether that's like, I'm very impressed with your commentary, I'm very impressed with your very first live stream podcast. And sorry, I derailed myself with a really bad joke. I love doing this live. Anyway, so UX is that user experience and making sure that users have a good experience. No matter what, you can't avoid having UX. It's just whether or not it's good or it's bad. UI, on the other hand, is user interface. That is like what they are actually dealing with, how they are interacting with the experience. So, for instance, like if you are running a soundboard at a concert, your user interface are the knobs, dials, and levers that are on the board, as well as your computer setup. That's the user interface for the work that you're doing. When you are engaging in reading content on a website, the user interface is the typographical choices. It's how the information is presented. It's where the information is presented, and how that moves throughout time. Like, is there animation? Do you have a really long article that is split up and paginated, which is something that I'm so glad the web has stopped doing, because like just trying to get fake ad clicks was such a terrible pattern. And so that's user interface. It's how the user interacts. It's the tools that they use to interact with.
Mm. Now, when focusing on UX and when people are looking to the future, I know we're coming toward the end of today's podcast, but what are some 3 things people should be focusing on?
So whenever it comes to UX, like I mentioned earlier in this episode, there have been a lot of layoffs in the UX field, and it can feel kind of tough sometimes as to like, what should I be doing? Should I be learning AI? Should I be learning how to code? Should I be skipping code because I can use a no code opportunity, like no code solutions? And I think that people can't go wrong focusing on fundamentals. And like the 3 things that I would say when it comes to UX to focus on is, first, human psychology. Making sure that you understand how people work. When people come to your website, are they going to eject because of, a bad experience? Understanding how people work is important to UX. The second thing is understanding basic economics. I know that that sounds a lot like, hey, learn math to do UX. That's not the case. What it is understanding how the work that you're doing is having an economic impact on your business, and what the environment is, the impact the environment is having on your business. Wanting to be able to see like, okay, like AI is really hot right now. Great. There's also been, in the last like month or so, a lot of pushback with a lot of negative stories about AI. And so like understanding this economic environment around AI allows you to talk about how to implement it or not to implement it in features, and to understand how to make that UX better, that user experience better. So yeah.
And trying to make it better.
Oh, good.
Oh, no, sorry.
No. I'm done. Go ahead. I have a third thing, but go ahead.
Oh, no, go for the 3rd thing, because when I get going,
Sure. All right, great.
I probably actually won't go that long.
So the first thing was human psychology. The second thing was basic economics. The third thing is systems thinking. When you're like building websites and creating user flows, you're not crafting an experience for one person. Like you're not a TripAdvisor trying to like get a nice itinerary for someone who's going on vacation. That's crafting an experience for an individual or a particular family. As a UX practitioner, you want to think in systems. Like it's like, okay, we're going to have hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of people interacting with this part of the interface. How am I going to provide them with an interface that is going to not be frustrating and instead be delightful? And so, if you focus on those three things as a UX practitioner, that I mean, you can't go wrong.
When looking at individuals you could model this after, I know earlier I brought up all these fast food chains, but you had talked to me previously about Gordon Ramsay, and now he has his kitchen nightmare shows, and he shows us thinking through the importance of UX and design in there. Well, he's always redoing the interior of his restaurant. He's
Mhm.
always trying to refine the process, communication, flow, handoffs, all the different chefs in there. And he's always improving ingredients. And so that's something I see a lot when it comes to maybe a brand new website where there are folks who never want to launch it because it's never good enough. And instead I go back and I'm like, well, hey, maybe like that's okay. Launch this because it is good where it is now.
Mhm.
But understand it's always going to be updating. It's always going to be changing. It's always going to be better the next day than it was yesterday, or at least hopefully it is. And it's kind of that mindset of we've never arrived and we're never going to arrive. It's just going to this it's just this process improvement plan for yourself that you're saying, well, wouldn't it be cool this year if we do this, this, and this? And give yourselves goals just like you were talking about with D&D. Say, by the end of our campaign, the end of the year, we'd like to be here. And then along the way, on that journey, new things are going to come up. You're like, well, turns out we can't do that because there's this obstacle. Okay, now we got to overcome this obstacle. A whole new hurdle. But do you think, I do want to close out the episode with this, and do you think companies place maybe too much emphasis on UX? And like in the case of Gordon Ramsay, maybe too much of an emphasis on the process of whatever's going on behind the scenes, that at the end of the day, you're not really focusing on maybe the dish itself, right? How does it taste? You're working so much on these other things that you're kind of forgetting that. You're losing out on that. Do you think companies kind of forget maybe something that's core to their what maybe critical to their core competencies, or do you think maybe it's the other direction where it's kind of becoming secondary for businesses? Like some folks, they don't think of accounting and HR; they think of marketing and biz dev first. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Overemphasis, or is it underemphasized?
You know what I think is happening with this is I think it's a case of both. I think some companies don't think about the user experience. They don't frame it in terms of like when someone comes to my restaurant, like how are they greeted? How do we seat them? Is the seating comfortable? Does the menu make sense? Like they don't walk through and think about it from the perspective of the person coming to the restaurant, and those restaurants end up on kitchen nightmares. It's like, listen, like you're serving really nasty hot dogs. Like don't do that. You want to be renowned for your hot dogs, you have to have good hot dogs, right? And so some companies they're not thinking about that user experience. On the other end of the spectrum, there are a lot of companies that they are focusing on user experience and not on the fact that user experience is about analyzing the user experience. So what I mean by that is that a lot of people will it's kind of like I don't know, organizing and reorganizing your book collection. All right. Like I'm a big reader. I used to have a lot of physical books. I've switched to electronic books. Don't judge me. But when I had a lot of physical books, I would rearrange my bookshelf constantly because I'm like, all right, I want to have a sci-fi section, a fantasy section, all of these different sections. And then like sometimes I'd be like, oh, well, I'm a designer. I'm going to do it by color. So all the reds are here, all the blues are here, and I would rearrange my book collection all the time. And when you focus on UX for the sake of UX, all you're doing is kind of like rearranging your bookshelves or like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. You're not actually making progress because you're not actually focusing on real problems. And some companies aren't focusing on real problems. They're focusing on like this, like, oh, can we get another like a 15% bump in signups for our widget if we did this. And meanwhile, they have like if they had broadened their scope to look at like their entire digital offerings or experience, that like if they fixed something else, it would have a profound impact on everything else. Like they don't like I guess they like hyper fixate on certain things and not like, hey, we have to like use UX sensibilities and research mechanisms to like analyze the entire experience and product. Like, are there things that we're doing internally on our teams that are impacting what's happening on our websites and what we're doing? And sometimes I have discussions with my clients about that. I'm like, hey, if you made this change to your structure on how you like talk about these things, you might have an easier go of it. So that's my answer, which is like sometimes people hyperfixate on the process instead of what it's supposed to do, and then other people they aren't even thinking about it when they really should be.
Have you seen the TV show Nathan for You, or have you like do you know who Nathan Fielder is?
No, I don't. Tell me.
Oh man. All right. So, piece of homework for the audience, for yourself. Go do yourself a favor and watch Pink's Hot Dogs, Nathan for You on YouTube after this. We're talking about process improvement, and you talked about hot dogs, people who make bad hot dogs. Well, in Los Angeles, there is a really famous hot dog shop called Pink's. At Pink's, one of their problems within process was they have this extremely long line. And so Comedy Central had the show Nathan for You, where he came in and he, went to one of Canada's top business schools and got really good grades. Like that's one of his things. So like he's an expert, whatever. And he goes in and to help with their line situation, he's like, "Well, I think we have an answer to help your the process. And what we're going to do is we're going to allow certain customers to skip the line altogether. And the reason being if you're in a hurry." So any customer who's in there now, again, what problems could there be, right? So they allow it. They're like, but hold on, wouldn't everyone say they're in a hurry? He's like, no, no, no. There's like 5 criteria. It's like if you're on your way to a doctor appointment, if you're yada yada yada, or if you're an air traffic controller, right? Like these all valid excuses to skip the line. And so they implement it. And actually the first day it kind of works out okay. Oh yeah, another one was a funeral. It's a little cringy because at certain moments funeral and he's like, "Okay, prove it." And I think like one person, I don't know, it wasn't like they had to get a death certificate, but yeah, they had to like prove that this person died to get to the front of a line for a hot dog. Well,
Hmm.
one person says like, "Yeah, I've got a doctor's appointment," and he finds out that the guy was faking whatever else. But I thought it was really funny because no matter what, sooner or later, you can have this idea that maybe works out in the beginning that you're like, "Oh, okay, this is cool." And then like somewhere along the line, you find out, "Oh, this is a horrible idea. People are playing the system." Now you've got something, but then you've got to repivot, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole own thing when you've got something that you love that you're attached to, and then you got to pivot and change. But anyway, regardless of that, go check out Nathan for You. It's probably one of my favorite skits on YouTube after this. But we are already over time. So if people want to check out more Design and Good Company, they want to follow this live series because regardless if you love it, hate it, or you're somewhere in the middle, we're going to keep being back because, hey, at least we like talking to each other. So we know we're our own audience. So, Randy, for the folks who want to check out more stuff about Design and Good Company and want to learn more, and they want to check out Four Kitchens, where do they go?
They want to go to LinkedIn. We have a Design a Good Company website. Sorry, we've got a Design a Good Company LinkedIn group. Please join that group. We'll be posting content there, having discussions, and just having a great time.
That's a great place to go. And you go check out Four Kitchens website, where I'm pretty confident the UX there is top notch. I think I know someone who's involved in that process there. Speaking of that, and
Yes.
looking at the comments here, yes, you can join our live sessions. We are going to be doing these things live. Go to the Four Kitchens YouTube channel, and you can see when we schedule them out, so you can be a part of it every week. And looking here, like, yeah, we have a comment here from, it looks like it's from Lakshmi, and if I misenunciated that, I'm sorry. Like, I'm trying here, but it said, well, could you skip a line for a hot dog if you yourself are a physician? My take is, Randy, if you're a physician and you're in a rush, you should be able to skip the line for a hot dog.
I mean, if you've got patients to treat, yes, like give that man or woman a hot dog. Like
Give
give them a
that
hot dog.
individual a hot dog. They got places to be. But you know what, Randy, you and I don't. What do? We just podcast. We gotta wait in line just like everybody else.
Got to wait in line for hot dogs.
But and everyone else, you're just gonna have to wait till next week for the next episode of Design in Good Company. He's Randy. I'm Broderick. We're out. We'll see you then.
Bye.